Reflection. Excerpt. The Reflection is a spooky ghost tale about two girls who go on a school trip to the countryside. A teenage girl named Rosemary attended a high school in a small city in Canada. One day, her biology teacher announced that he was taking the entire class on a school trip. Everyone was delighted. The next day, a bus brought all of the students to a remote part of the countryside. The purpose of the trip was, of course, educational. The teacher told them they were going to explore a nature trail. As they walked along the trail, Rosemary was enjoying the fresh air and the time off from school. She was chatting happily to her best friend, Amanda. The two girls were caught up in conversation and started lagging behind. Somewhere along the way they took a wrong turn and became separated from the rest of the group. The girls kept walking, hoping that they would eventually meet up with the rest of the class, but they just became more lost. Eventually, they came to a small pathway and were relieved when they saw that it led to a little cottage, set back amongst the trees. The walls were covered with ivy and the garden was overgrown. The doors and windows looked as if they hadn't been painted in decades. When they knocked on the door, a little old lady came out to greet them. She was very frail and stooped with age. They asked her if they could use her phone. The old woman invited them inside and offered them a cup of tea. The two girls were tired and accepted her offer without hesitation. Inside, the cottage was dirty and grimy. The floor was muddy and the fireplace was covered in soot. The old woman told them to sit down and, for some reason, as she hurried out to the kitchen, she said, "Keep your eyes shut." The girls wondered what she meant by that last comment. Curious, they looked around the room and their eyes settled on a large mirror that was standing in the corner. Somehow, they couldn't seem to take their eyes off the mirror and sat there, quietly staring at their own reflections. In the mirror, their faces appeared strange and distorted. It looked as if their cheeks were covered with scratches. They couldn't seem to tear their eyes away from the unsettling image. As they watched in horror, their faces began to change rapidly. More scratches appeared, followed by large bruises and bleeding wounds. The two girls had a very bad feeling about this. Just then, Amanda turned her head and Rosemary saw something that terrified her. In the reflection, she saw that Amanda had a sharp knife sticking out of her eye and her own face looked as if it had been crushed. They covered their eyes with their hands and started shaking and screaming. The old woman came hobbling back into the room and when she looked at the two girls, she growled, "I told you to keep your eyes closed." Without another word, Rosemary and Amanda jumped to their feet and ran out of the house. They kept running, crashing through bushes and jumping over streams, not knowing where they were going. Eventually, they saw the school bus in the distance and breathed a sigh of relief. Their classmates were surprised to see the two girls come running across the fields. The teacher got angry with them and told the girls they had kept everybody waiting for over an hour. Rosemary and Amanda were just glad to be back with their classmates again. The school trip was over, so all of the students climbed on board and the bus drove off. By the next day, the two girls had almost forgotten about their scary incident with the old woman in the little cottage. However, exactly 1 week later, Rosemary and Amanda were found dead in their beds. Their sheets were stained with blood and their bodies were covered in scratches, bruises and deep wounds.